It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with my co-host all the way from Tucson, Patricia Kirkman. PK, how are you tonight?
Absolutely fabulous, and so anxious to get into our show tonight.
Oh, my gosh.
Woo.
You know, we are lucky ladies, I got to say.
Yes, we are.
We are so lucky because we have Ed Becker from A True Haunting he's going to join us in just a few minutes. Now, as you know, we had Nick Redfern scheduled for tonight, but poor Nick, he got sick, and he got really sick to the point where he lost his voice. So we had to change our venue around, and I called Ed today, and Ed was kind enough to say, I'll come on the show. And I got to tell you, I love Ed because we're going to get into this before I introduce him. And after our numerology segment, we had quite an adventure with Ed on our last show, which was several years ago when his first book came out. Now he's got two books,
Right?
A True Haunting and A True Haunting 2. But when his first book came out, Helene and I were doing the show on Blog Talk, and we're going to get into that and share with everybody exactly what happened before we bring Ed on, because it was really creepy. So, anyways, we are in spooky October with Supernatural Girls this week. And so, PK, let's start off with the numerology. We got a lot of crazy stuff going on, so tell us what's happening.
Well, first off, as we've talked about in the past, this month is a preview of next year. And God, folks, it has between the weather issues, the fires, and the deviants that are out there and about, which we're going to talk about, Mr. Weinstein, all of these things that are going on. Don't forget, this is a preview of what's coming. We are not out of the woods. Weather-wise, we're going to have major issues throughout this coming year. But as far as people in the news, we're going to see more and more negativity bounce up. And hopefully by the year's end, we can clear the deck and get some of these crazy people off the list and out of the way.
Good.
But Harvey Weinstein, you asked me to take a look at him. Well, he was fired on a 9-day, which says ending and wrapping up of old things that he can't fix. He's also, he has so much karma within his chart, but he's got an arrogance that is absolutely unbelievable. In his chart, he doesn't have a big ego from the standpoint
Really?
of how he projects himself. But he thinks he can say and do anything and get away with it. That's the difference.
Wow,
He kinda
that's
hides
certainly
under the
played
radar.
out.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Anything to do with change and changes, he wants his way, and he thinks it's only done his way. Most of his chart is about me by an eye. So taking a look at things, hey, he was fired on a 9-day in a month that represents his coming year. So his coming year, it's a 6-year, and he has 6 5s in his chart. So he loves change, and he likes to do it his way, but he's always trying to set up what he considers perfection. It just got cut in half because it's not coming that way anymore. It's been a long time coming. But the best part about all this is that there's changes that are taking place are not going to allow him to get away with anything anymore. And we talked earlier about his brother as well. These are two bad boys.
Wow.
They're really not mentally well if you take a look at their attitude. Very clever at how they do what they do. No question about that. But a strange part, neither one of them are good communicators. They're demanders. They are we've talked about before when a person has to communicate, they have to kind of soften the edges. Neither one of these people, they don't care. They just go for the throat. They're not in the least bit caring about making it better for anybody else. It's all about them. And I do mean all about them. It's going to be a nasty thing before it's over, because we're going to see a tie up not only with Harvey, but what he and Robert have built, shall we say, as a backdrop for the bad side and the negative side of Hollywood. All of a sudden, these people are going to start to get sick and tired of being sick and tired, because most of them, and I shouldn't say all of them, but a good portion of them have been caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and now they either have to play it straight or get out of the line of fire, because these people are going to bring a lot of them down with them. A lot of them.
I bet. And it's about time.
Oh, God, yes.
When you hear, the tape recording of the New York City sting and how he was talking to that model, and oh my God, it was just horrible. And the more serious crimes that he's been accused of also. But going beyond that, Hollywood in general has long been rumored to harbor an entire pedophile network. And I believe it was Corey Feldman that said this has been going on, but he would not name names, because he said, if I do that, they'll either destroy my career or kill me, or both. And so it's something that people have been so afraid to talk about. So it's not just women.
Oh, no.
Although right now, kudos to Rose McGowan and the other women that have come to the forefront and risked everything to expose this.
Going to be more and more of that. In fact, a male actor this morning said as a youngster, he was put into a position where the producer came out in his robe and expected him to take care of him. This is ridiculous. And who in the hell do they think they are?
That's right. Who do they think they are? Well, the Hollywood elite has embarrassed themselves in so many different ways over the last year. And we've all come to see them for what they really are. And I think this whole celebrity worship thing is going to come down around their ankles. So it's about time.
Well, better than their bitches.
Yeah. You're right. You're right about that.
But I think if we pay attention with what's coming up this year, we're going to see a lot of people fall from grace.
Well,
definitely fall from grace.
Your famous line, PK, they all need an exorcism. And I think they're going to get one.
That's a good idea. Excellent idea.
They're going to get one. Yes.
It's only just begun.
It has. Well, very interesting with the numbers. Thank you for taking a look at all of that for us. And on our website and on our Facebook page, we've got some interesting stories, don't we? We've got a story about mermaids that everybody should take a look at. And Yellowstone's been rocking and rolling. Who knows what's coming next with Earth changes? And as you mentioned, we got a long road to go with that. But Yellowstone has logged in more earthquakes, minor earthquakes, but still so many, more than ever before in recorded history. So there's something happening all across the world with earthquakes, but in Yellowstone especially. That's on our Facebook page, everybody. So go to our Facebook page, Supernatural Girlz with a Z. Give us a like, follow us, and we will be posting more and more stories for you. We do that every week. So take a look there. Now, I got to tell you, I mentioned this earlier, but when Helene was alive, we did a show with Ed and his wife, Marcia, at the time, who was available. They both came on the show. We were on a different network. And during the show, Ed and Marcia were terrific guests. They were able to tell us this incredible story. It scared the crap out of us. It was really, really great story. But during the interview, we heard this heavy breathing. And during the break, Helene said, I'm going to go talk to Ed and Marcia, and I'm just going to tell them somebody's breathing like really closely into their microphone, and they need to move the mic away from their mouths so that we don't hear this heavy breathing. And it was very noticeable. I mean, it was very loud. So Helene goes into the private room with them and tells them, who's got the mic? You got to move it away. And Ed and Marcia very politely told Helene, it's not us. We are not doing any breathing here into the microphone. Our microphone is far away. And it's not us, but this happens when we go on shows. There's this entity that starts doing this heavy breathing. And we swear to God, it isn't us. So again, that was when we knew we had visitors on the show that were following Ed and Marcia around. Now, as you know, Helene was great at banishing things that didn't belong. Right. So she did a little banishment and it stopped. But I can't promise that I can do the same if the heavy breather shows up tonight. We may just have to listen to it if the breather comes to the show. So we're going to see what happens. But when I was talking to Ed earlier today, I said, I've had all kinds of electronic glitches, which I never have. I said, I think it's from your followers. You've got this little band of followers. I think they came to pay me a visit today. So anyways, but we are so blessed. We are so lucky to have Ed on the show tonight. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him. He has the distinction of owning a haunted building in Chicago that became the subject of the first televised paranormal event in 1970 by NBC. Long before The Exorcist, long before the Amityville Horror, there was true haunting. So he never sought recognition until his daughter published his recollections in 2011. So that's a little bit ago. But the book True Haunting became an instant bestseller, holding #1 on Amazon US for a year in parapsychology and for 6 months in the United Kingdom, breaking his publisher's ebook record and topping the sales of their 96,000 book catalog. It holds the most 5-star reviews of any true ghost story in Kindle history. Now, Ed has appeared on Sci-Fi's Paranormal Witness, and I'm going to tell everybody, if you haven't seen The Tenets, is the name of the segment on Paranormal Witness. You've got to check it out. Right. It's on YouTube. It's fabulous. It is incredible, and it's one of their highest rated shows also. And anyways, this is a great guest that we're so lucky to have on with us tonight. I want to urge everybody to get both of his books, True Haunting and True Haunting 2. So Ed, welcome to the show. Yay.
Thank you, Pat. Is my voice okay?
You sound great.
We can hear you just fine. And now you've had there's the book. Yay!
Buy the book. Get out there.
That's right. It's a great book.
It is a great book. Both of them are great books. We read the second one today. You have had an experience and a half with this haunted building, and it hasn't left you. I mean, this is something that literally has followed you around.
Yeah, I mean, we were on a few other radio programs. I did a lot of them, actually, between 2012 and 2014. And we had a couple of them where they'd heard EVPs. And then the chat room started interpreting what the EVPs were saying while Marcia and I were on. So things follow us, and it's the reason I warn people. I get a lot of mail, and people want to get involved in the paranormal. And I tell them, don't open that door, because you're going to encounter something that you have no idea what its intentions are. You certainly have no control over it. And if its intentions are bad, you're going to suffer. And I've got a laundry list of people that I've seen really suffer in the last 5 years. Personality changes and all kinds of things. Ghosts are raw. Yeah, you're messing with something that you can't control and you can't see it. So, when I talk to these investigators, a lot of times I laugh because I'm going to go catch a ghost, all right? It's easy to be brave when you can't see it. If they really saw what's on the other side of that realm, I don't think that they'd want to go hunting for it myself.
I think you're right. They'd probably want to run screaming into the night. It's unpleasant. And a lot of the things you went through and your wife went through and your tenants went through, which is the focus of the second book, is what your tenants went through. Right. It's really pretty horrific. And you were a non-believer when all this started, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And when I look back at my whole experience, I was pretty ignorant. Even when I just become a believer, I became a believer that there was paranormal and something was happening. but I had no idea the power and what these things can do to you. I mean, I got a letter today from a woman in actually South Africa, and she asked me if I was ever totally afraid, and I told her I was too stupid. I mean, I antagonized it. I was too stupid. I had no respect for that realm. And so I told her, I said, no, I was never really afraid. I wouldn't go back there today. I mean, I've been offered money and offered a lot of things to go back and visit. And because the building was under foreclosure for a while, so it was wide open to the public. I wouldn't go back there. Not for any amount. Not for any amount. You know, I came out of it. I don't think I'm totally unscathed, but, you know, I came out of it with effects that I can live with.
Now, the movie that was done, or the television show, I should say, that was done by Paranormal Witness was excellent. And one of the shots that really had me holding my breath was when your wife was in the kitchen and all of a sudden the baby stroller starts heading towards the basement stairs. Did that really happen? Because I didn't know if that was dramatized, but it really was scary.
They did dramatize it. I mean, they dramatized everything, but that really did happen. And it forced me to, there was no door on that downstairs basement because the woman who lived there previously would go back and forth at her will. So that day I had to put a door, I had to put the door down in the basement. I brought the door up, put it on there, and put a clasp on there so they could close it. But yeah, that did happen.
That was very frightening. I mean, you see your little baby in that stroller and something unseen pushing it quickly, I mean, fast, towards that door, which would have sent your baby flying down the stairs. Oh, my God. That was a really frightening moment watching that.
There were so many things that happened. It's the reason that there's a true haunting, too, because Dan White, who's in my book, we hadn't talked to each other in almost 45 years. And when he left, if you read True Haunting 1, they left and they went on to their life, as far as we knew.
That's right. Yeah, they were gone. Right.
Well, when I was filming Paranormal Witness, I asked the director, could he come down and get some footage on there? So they said, yeah. So Dan came down from Illinois, Upper Illinois, and he started to tell me, I mean, the first thing he said to me was he bought my book, he had read it, and he said some of the same things happened to him, which I didn't really know about. And then he said, that house ruined my life. And I said, how do you figure? And he said, I guess his wife hadn't lived there 90 days. This is something I didn't know. But before they lived there 3 months, she already wanted out. And she even left and went to her mother's for a month or so. By the end of it, they wound up separating, getting a divorce. And he lives at one end of the state, and she lives at the other.
Wow.
She took his firstborn, and he's never seen his firstborn.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So, and he started telling me about their experience. I was flabbergasted. You know, usually when a writer writes a book, it's nonfiction. You fear the fact that someone's going to pop up and say, "Oh, that's not true. It didn't happen that way." I had the exact opposite happen. I mean, Dad gave me such a. He didn't want to. He won't go on radio. He doesn't like to go public. But he gave me pages and pages and pages of his recollections, and I had a choice to make whether I should redo True Haunting 1 or create a True Haunting 2. And by the time I decided to write True Haunting 2, I had already sold, 30 to 40,000 copies of True Haunting. So I figured it wouldn't be fair to these people to ask them to buy it again.
Right.
So I wrote True Haunting 2. And there was enough in there to fill it because, honest to God, I never did take Marcia into account. I mean, I talk about her in True Haunting 1. But as a young man with a big ego and facing something that I could not do anything about, I wouldn't come home and say, "How was your day?" I already knew how her day was, and I didn't want to hear it. So, she had her recollections, and there were quite a few things in true hunting, too, that I learned. I had forgotten. There was one instance in there where she talks about how I got up and broke my guitar. I forgot I did that, but I did. One of the things, the spirit had different effect, I think, on different people, but I was always agitated and angry. So it didn't take me much to get angry. And she said I got angry. I got up and took my guitar and just hit a home run with it against the wall. And that's what it did to me. Aside from, sleep deprivation, anybody who is involved in a real haunting, you don't sleep well. Mm-hmm. And it's why today I recommend to a lot of people, I get a lot of letters where people have some kind of activity. It's not really frightening. So when it's not frightening, I tell them leave it alone. Because one thing I know for sure, that if you try to stop it, it'll manifest something else, which is the mistake I made on Camel Street.
Now, do you think that there was more than one entity in that house?
Oh yeah, there were at least 4, maybe 5.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
They each had their zones. So I don't believe that, there was something really dark on the first floor. When Joe DeLuise, the medium, went down there and came back up and said he couldn't handle what's there. He said, I have to go seek an exorcist. I didn't even know what an exorcist was in those years. So he did go out and look for an exorcist. As a medium, he didn't want to make contact with it, whatever the hell it was. Now, upstairs, I felt that, Marcia took refuge in the kitchen. And even though there was activity in the kitchen, she never felt fear unless she crossed the threshold into the rest of the house. That's where the bathroom was. And after she had her bathtub incident, she never closed the bathroom door again. And she'd wait till I got home to take her bath. And so we knew, we were familiar absolutely with 2, possibly 3. And Joe said there were at least 4. I didn't know.
So the kitchen for your wife, at least, was a safe zone. She felt safe in the kitchen.
Yeah, and it was, I made it brighter with brighter lights. And then she also had the back door, which went to the enclosed back porch, which was almost all windows. Mm-hmm. So she could see the outside. She could actually get outside quickly. She had to exit, and she felt more comfortable there. Now that when these things happen to you, your habits change. You don't even notice it sometimes. But she used to lay on the couch in the front room watching the soap operas. And once we moved into Camel Street, she never did that again. I bought her a little tiny TV, and she sat on the kitchen table. And she didn't want to go into the rest of the house. Neither did our cat. Our cat got chased out because originally she picked her throne to be in the front room on a velvet chair, and one night she came out screaming and growling.
Why?
Tail was all extended, and she went into our bedroom, and she just never left the bedroom after that, except to go to the cat box. And,
wow,
that's strange.
Yeah, I was surprised when at Paranormal Witness meeting with Dan, because he laughed when he said when he read the book and saw that I lost 2 dogs. And I said, what was so funny about that? He said, well, I lost mine.
Oh, my God.
I never knew he had a dog.
Oh.
So I said, what did you have? He had bought an expensive Afghan. Lasted 3 days.
Oh, my word.
And then what happened?
It jumped the fence and was gone. And,
so these dogs just took off. They didn't want to stay anywhere near this house.
Yeah, absolutely. The cat got thrown out the window twice.
Oh my gosh, how terrible.
Until I actually nailed the window shut. And I can't explain it, because she went 24 feet, 25 feet down to concrete.
Oh.
And the first time she was unscathed, she was perfect, just huddled up and afraid. I picked her up and brought her in the house. The second time, she had a little bit of blood on her nose. And that's when I nailed the window shut. So yeah, terrorized.
Do you hear that noise?
I was just going to ask, do you hear something like a dog panting?
Yes, I do. Do you hear that, Ed? It just stopped when PK said something.
I'm listening to it, and I kept thinking, oh, it's my imagination. No, it isn't.
No.
And I was just going to say it when you said it.
Yeah.
It might be my dog. Might be my dog scratching over here. She's scratching her throat, her pillow. Starlet, stop it.
We'll see if it's Skylar. It could be someone else. Well, it's interesting. We're talking about pets, and there is a question in the chat room about pets. Shandarik wants to know, what about the pets in the family? You know, do entities affect animals? Well, you certainly just answered that question. So they certainly did affect the pets in the family in a major way.
Yeah, in fact, it was, I was rarely afraid. I was too stupid, I guess. But what did scare me was the first dog was there was a shepherd husky, looked like it was part wolf. It was that size. Now that dog was very loyal. So, you know, if I was walking in the woods and a bear came out, that dog would get between me and a bear. It was that loyal and that brave. And the one night it came into our bedroom, came out of the dining room, it jumped on the bed, and it stared at our bedroom door, and put its back up and its throat down like it was ready to attack, and just growled like a son of a gun. And I had to calm her down, and I took her for a walk, and it was the next morning that she ran away. But when I thought about that, it was like, if that dog would take on a bear or protect me from anything, what the hell did she see?
Yeah,
exactly.
That scared her that much.
Yeah, that made her leave your property and never come back, as loyal as she was. Oh my gosh.
Incredible.
Yeah. I mean,
it happened to the second dog, but the second dog hadn't bonded with us as long. But now, you know, I tell people, and I do it here, my bedroom is a sanctuary. So if anybody goes in there, they'd probably think I'm some kind of psychopath. Because I've got icons, and I got 20 rosaries. The bedroom's a sanctuary. And I recommend that to everybody, especially if they have an entity in their house. Keep your bedrooms locked up and protected, because that's where you sleep. That's where your dreams, your subconscious, you're vulnerable. And,
good point. Yes.
What would you recommend they put in there besides rosaries and such?
I think whatever they hold strong beliefs in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was brought up Catholic, so I have a lot of Catholic icons. I've got 2 Pope-less rosaries.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a statue of the Infant of Prague that was in a church in Rome, actually.
Oh, my.
It's about 100 years old. I power pack my room. I don't care what people think.
They're not supposed to be in there anyway, except you, right?
Yep, I sleep. I sleep very well. I sleep very well. But I get a lot of emails and letters from people. Apparitions appearing next to their bed or at their bed are very, very common. And most times the people aren't afraid. They seem to recognize who the apparition was. When they don't is when they become afraid. And that's when I tell them to seal their bedroom, seal it up.
Yep. Seal it up. But we've got lots of questions for you that are coming up in the chat room. We're going to try to get to them after the break. And you've stimulated a lot of conversation here. People have a lot of things they want to know about with your incredible adventure with True Haunting, Book 1 and Book 2. And
book.
There it is. And so we are going to take a very short commercial break. In the meantime, everybody, you can take a look at our Facebook page and read the mermaid stories and all the other great stories that we have on tap on Facebook, Supernatural Girlz with a Z. So Stay tuned, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with my co-host, PK, and our incredible guest, Ed Becker, who is the author of 2 terrific books, and they are called True Haunting and True Haunting 2. You want to make sure to get them so that you can read all the details of this amazing haunted house story. And it's really about haunted people, too. It's not just the house. This really had an effect on everybody. Mm-hmm. Now, Camille is asking, is the sequel of the book available on Kindle? Do you know if it is, Ed?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Great.
You can get it on Kindle, Camille, so go out and get it on Kindle. Now, here's an easy question from Wookie, wants to know, how many square feet was this property?
The property or the building?
The building, I'm sure they're asking.
It was 2 stories and a basement. And I'm going to guess that the each floor was about, it wasn't large, it was more like 800 square feet or something like that. It was rather small.
Now, here's a question. Right. Here's a question. This is from Zan Darkus, who wants to know, was this story picked up by any news outlets outside of the city?
No, NBC had it. And one of the tragedies is that because I guess in those years they had regulations about how many times something could air. And the footage from the news ran, they ran it all weekend and part of the next week because they just kept getting demands and people were calling. Well, wow. NBC made a 20-minute segment for a program that they had in that time called, it was a new program called First Tuesday. Their aim was to go after the 60 Minutes crowd. A segment was made of our experience for First Tuesday. We never got to see it because it didn't play in Illinois. Oh. And Paranormal Witness, because they're owned by NBC, I had access, to their archives. So I wanted all the footage. If you look on the YouTube video, at about the 1.5-minute mark, you're going to clearly see a ghost. He'll come into the door and then back off.
No kidding.
When a reader told, I won't watch the footage, but when a reader told me that, I knew that NBC, they had filmed there for 16 hours on 2 different days. So I asked if I could get all the footage. Well, they sent somebody to Chicago and they claimed it was all lost.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And what can you do? I'd give anything to see all, because I know that whoever had the 16 hours would not be looking for ghosts. So it was like, what else was in there that they didn't see? But yeah, no, Marcia and I, after it was over, we ran. Unlike some people that raise a flag and they want celebrity status and they want to be recognized, we changed our name out of the phone book. We ran for the hills. We didn't want any celebrity status. In those years, having a haunted building was, it was something that could hurt you, reputation-wise. Yeah. I was in the computers, so imagine a guy who works with logic in this most illogical, most illogical situation. I think
exactly.
That's what kept me in denial for so long.
Well, sure. Sure. And here's a question that feeds right into what you're talking about from Entaduran, who's asking, do you think that the paranormal is considered taboo now as it was back in the 60s and 70s?
Oh, definitely not. I don't think it's considered taboo, but I'm embarrassed for what it's developed into because you talk to people, and even specialists who are talking about certain areas of paranormal, and they're all using movie references, and they're using stuff from the scene on Supernatural. They're talking. There was one investigator who said he exorcised a Wendigo on the East Coast. Well, the only time Wendigo was used was in the program Supernatural, and in a book I wrote, in 1995. The Wendigo is nothing but it's a myth of folklore for the Chippewa Indians, Ojibways.
Yes.
So it's got a very little, there's a very little population that would even use that word. But people are already, they find these things and they're using them. And if you read True Haunting 1, I don't know, you won't find the word horrified or terrified in there. I never tried to scare people, because this was exactly what can happen to you. They will open doors, which is very common. They will create footsteps.
And don't you feel that they feed off of fear and they feed off of anger? Because you were finding yourself, you said, angry and irritated, and it didn't take much for your temper to flare.
I was in perpetual agitation. I don't know how else to describe it. Now, a lot of it probably is sleep deprivation. But they knew, these entities are smart. When we installed the telephone, I put it in the middle of the house. Now, there was a reason for that. That's because it was accessible from either side. And phones were very expensive. You had to get them from the phone company. You couldn't own a phone. They were FCC licensed. So I got the phone, I couldn't afford to put 3 or 4 phones in. So I think it was something, I want to say it was like $85 or $90 a jack. And that's about what I made a week. So I put the phone in. I'd be at work, I'd dial the home number, and it'd be busy. Now, in those years, there was no call waiting.
No.
There was no automatic stuff at all. It was all switchboard operated. So if you took your phone off the hook, it would make an sound for a short period of time until the switchboard operator at the Illinois Bell would just pull the plug on it. I'd come home and I'd be yelling at Marcia, like, what the hell are you doing on the phone all day? She said, I wasn't on the phone. Well, I look in the front room and there it is laying there. And that took me through a whole bunch of rationales and excuses. Because I said, okay, it must be the dog. Must be the cat.
So it was just laying there off the hook.
Yeah, it was laying there off the hook. Yeah. And but I'd come home and I'd be irritated. And of course, Marcia was telling me the truth. I mean, she understood from the time we moved in there that there was something in that house. I just basically gave her the BS word too many times. So I just didn't believe it. Even when the priest who christened our daughter blessed our house, his brass dispenser for holy water shattered. Not like in the movies where it made a big boom and a crash. He just raised his hand and it like crumpled. And he immediately crossed himself, got down and started picking up pieces and became unglued. And Marcia kind of knew what that was about. I didn't. So I was actually mad at him because he didn't finish the blessing. I forced him to bless our daughter's room. But I think he knew what he was up against. And, I don't even know if the United States had an exorcist resident in the whole damn place in 1970. Exorcisms were just very, very rare.
It was back then. Yeah, it was. Things have changed now, though, and I hear that exorcists are, their demand is on the rise and there's more of them. So I guess there's some level of acceptance that this is real and it needs to be attended to. Here's a question again from Wookie, who's asking, how many mediums and psychics took a look at this place?
We had 2 different groups, actually. The first group, I considered them to be charlatans. Although one of the women did tour the first floor and she picked up on the dark energy in the front bedroom. She was 100% correct. So she had some ability. And I think each gifted person has a different type of ability. But the people that came with her were thrill seekers. And they got their thrill. They ran the hell out of there.
With a pitchfork behind him.
They were so thrilled. They ran out screaming.
Yeah, I was able to make the spirits do certain things at will. So when I tied the kitchen door, I could make that spirit vibrate that door because he liked to open it, and I tied it shut. And because the string had a little bit of leeway in it, he could vibrate it. I could do that at will. But the phone off the hook, it would happen. None of us ever saw it happen. It would just be off the hook. And until this first group came in, and the last thing they did as they were leaving out the door was the phone came off the receiver.
Oh,
It was a princess.
my gosh.
It was a princess phone, so it just flopped over. And
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. I don't know if I mentioned it in the book, but I had to laugh because the one fellow looked like he reminded me of Don Knotts, and he had a red wig that was askew, and he got scared. You know, I was thinking after they left, I was angry. You know, I was always angry. So I told Carl, I said those blah 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 blah. And I said, what the hell do you do hunting ghosts if he's so afraid of them? But then the second group of people were, they were for real, and they gave me the belief in that gift. They sent in Tom Valentine, an author. He's written some novels. He writes some medical books. I've tried to reach him. I can't find him. But he came in to investigate Marcia and I, had us fill out like almost a form of our personal habits. I mean, he checked everything in the house, checked our refrigerators. Did he find any beer? You know, Marcia and I never did drink. People are upset when they come to my house because there's no beer and alcohol here. But they did everything.
They were upset.
Because he was paving the way for Joe DeLuise, who had national prominence at the time. Joe had gotten some press because he helped find Tex Watson, one of the Manson killers. So he was able to locate him, and that was like a big deal. Then he predicted some bridge collapse. So Tom Valentine, they did not want to send him in to be fooled, you know. So they made sure that they examined the house. And then when Joe DeLuise came in, he brought his protege with him, a woman, and she just blew me away. I still remember they came in, and I was a little skeptical because of the last group. And he looked kind of evil. You see pictures of him. He had a black goatee and black hair, and he'd wear all black. And the girl with him was wearing black, and she also had very, very raven-colored hair. And they weren't smiling or anything, so it was like, they kind of looked spooky to me. But I took them upstairs, and then Joe, he looks in the dining room, where that's right where you entered our apartment in the middle. There's no furniture there. And he looks at me and he says, you don't use this room very much. And I'm thinking in my head, duh, you know, there's nothing there to use. It's an empty room. Then he looked over and he saw our bedroom. And there was only 2 adults and an infant. But he saw the bedroom, and there was no door on that bedroom. We put a vinyl door, a folding door there later. But he said, that's your bedroom. Like if he was telling me something. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not going to end well, you know. And I've got an eyebrow that once it starts to raise,
Yes.
Marcia knew it. He's boiling it over, you know. Well, the eyebrow raised, and about that time, the woman with him grabbed my hand, literally, very gently, and she looked at me in the eyes and she said, bullets. And I said, what? And she said, bullets. And only I knew what that meant, because in cleaning out the basement, I found this jar with bullets in it. And I wouldn't, in those years, Chicago burned its garbage, actually not too far from where we were living. So I wouldn't throw it out because I figured they're going to go off and maybe hurt somebody. So I took the jar, I put it up in the rafters. So when she said bullets the second time, I said, where? And she said, they're in the basement in the rafter.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, that definitely do it.
There was no possible way she could know that. And at that point, she had my attention. We both had my attention. And Joe, God bless him, I mean, he didn't deal with me too long before he started to taper my behavior. You know, because he heard me cursing at, I had named the one Bennett. That was the outlet for all my anger. So I started swearing at Bennett. And Joe said, don't do that. You know, face it with prayer and compassion. And he said, these are lost souls. He changed my whole attitude. It got me back to praying, and which is all you can do, really.
Right.
You can't. It's much like I said earlier. You don't want to change the routine. If you, you know, when I tied the kitchen door shut, I invited it to do something else, which is what it did. And if you have activity in your house and it doesn't frighten you, leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Just protect your bedroom, like I said earlier. Keep your bedroom your sanctuary.
That's good advice. Now, here's a question from Zoldan who's asking, did anyone die as a result of this haunting?
No one died as a result of the haunting. No, I mean, my sister's life was ruined. It's much like I said earlier, I think on the break.
Right.
That's an awfully sad story with your sister. I mean, my heart just breaks hearing this. I know it's written about in your first book, and it's also in the Paranormal Witness television show. But it is just devastating to know that your sister's life was ruined this way by this haunting.
Well, that's what demons do. They're going to enter you. They're not going to ever surface, and they're not going to walk out of the free will. They're going to ride you into hell. Now, if it takes 40 years, they don't care. They have no time. Time is sort of our conception. They have no time. And, I mean, it aggravates me. I've got webisodes. If you go to www.edwardbecker.com, I've got a webisode on demons. And I know a little bit about them. I've seen a real exorcism, and I've known 2 exorcists personally. Demons don't reveal themselves. So, much like I said, if a person says, I need an exorcism, they really need a psychologist or a psychiatrist, because the demon's never going to call for their own exorcism. The person themselves is not going to allow you. I mean, I should really ask exorcists today how they deal with it, because if you're a true exorcist, you want to know that your subject, first off, is not mentally ill. Second off, there's 2,000 medications that can affect a person's personality, right down to simple blood pressure medications. So you got to kind of figure out, are they off? What's their medication? And then, you kind of have to get a feel for whether the person is lying or not, whether they're using another substance that they don't want to admit to. And I don't know how they come about with an exorcism, because the one I saw was a man, and they had him strapped down. You can't do that today. And that demon's going to hurt you. But you can't take a person and strap them down. You can go to jail for that. So I don't know how exorcists actually handle it today in this day and age.
It's interesting. There's a new not new, but there's a psychiatrist that's coming out as an exorcist. His name is Dr. Gallagher. We're hoping to get him on the show to talk about these things. And he says that more and more psychiatrists and psychologists are starting to understand that these entities are real and they do affect people. And it's fascinating, because I know way back when all of this started for you, that was not how professionals in the mental health field were thinking, but actually now that's how they're thinking. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle these types of situations with people who may be possessed or maybe be influenced, because it sounds like your sister was influenced in a very negative way. Part of it was brought on by her use of Ouija boards in the house.
Yeah, and that's another thing I don't advocate at all, is that I don't think, that everybody who buys a Ouija board is going to get possessed. I think very few people are able to achieve that level of being able to cross that realm and open the door.
Right. Yes, but you're right.
It's much like I say, when you do open that door, There's going to be spirits on the other side.
Right.
Number one, you're going to be looking for someone specific, maybe your uncle, maybe your aunt, maybe your mother, maybe your father. That spirit's going to lie to you. It's going to tell you whatever the hell you want to hear because it wants you to continue to play. And the analogy I use is if, to understand it, if I were at a prison, standing on a prison wall, and the yard were full of prisoners, and I took a cell phone and threw it out there and said, whoever gets it can use it. Who do you think would get the cell phone?
Right.
The biggest, baddest guy out there. Well, when you're begging for somebody to come through the Ouija board, who do you think is going to come through there? Because you've got weak spirits, you've got stronger spirits. I don't know why. I mean, I wish investigators would ask questions and compile them, because some spirits can be a shadow, some spirits can't be seen at all, some spirits can manifest and be an apparition. Why? You know, I don't know why. But the one thing I do know is coming at you from a Ouija board is going to be the strongest spirit on the other side, and they're going to lie. So they're going to be whoever the hell you ask them to be, because they want you to keep playing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a fellow who's his story will not end well. He's addicted to the Ouija board. He's a trucker, keeps it in his truck.
Oh, my.
Oh, yeah, he believes he's talking to his soulmate. And I don't know where it's going to end, but it will not end well. And I stay away from those things. And I wouldn't even like the ghost boxes, because what you're doing is the same as a Ouija board. You're asking these things to come over. And
well, I think.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're raising some. No, it's okay. You're raising some really good points about what's going to come through is the biggest, baddest thing, the one with the most energy or focus. And then while you're waiting on one side of the Ouija board, do you have enough will, focus, and understanding to handle what's coming through? Most people don't. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I think you issue a warning with good common sense here. And we also have told people the same thing. Don't go shaking a stick at a snake. It's not a good idea. Right. And if you don't have training, you don't know what you're doing, and you're inviting these things into your home, you could end up in a very bad situation. And certainly, you didn't invite these things in. They were just there when you got there. And then they gradually made themselves known to you and your wife and your tenants that they were the ones in charge, more or less, in your house. Now, how long did you live there in that house?
It was 1 year, 18 months, and 20-something hours, I think, or something like that.
But it probably felt like 100 years. Well, we're going to have to take another short break. And everybody, keep writing your questions into the chat room, irnchat.com, irnchat.com. We will ask Ed your questions on your behalf. It's a great, great story. There's so much more to tell. So stay tuned, everybody. You are listening to Supernatural Girls Radio. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, here with my co-host, PK. And you can find PK at patriciakirkman.com in case you want to have your numbers checked out. See what's coming up for you in the coming year. patriciakirkman.com. You can reach her there. And we have an incredible guest tonight. And what did you want to say, PK? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, but don't forget to let them know what you do.
Oh, yes. If you want any dream analysis, tarot card readings, I'm the one you want to call or write to, and I'd be happy to schedule an appointment with you. Thanks for reminding me, PK. And our guest tonight is the incredible Ed Becker, who survived a very scary haunting in Chicago. I would not want to have been in his shoes, right, PK?
Definitely not.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my God. Okay, well, we've got, again, a ton of questions for you, Ed, from the chat room. And again, I want to urge everybody, please go ahead and buy Ed's very good books. Excellent. Yes. True Haunting and True Haunting 2. They are available on Amazon, and I'm sure in bookstores as well. Ed's going to hold them up. There they are. Very well written. You won't be able to put them down. I guarantee you. Once you start reading them, you'll be reading them until they're done. Excellent books. And actually, somebody was asking, how long did it take you to write your book?
It didn't actually take me that long because the book itself originally was a diary.
Ah,
Okay.
So I wrote it as a recollection of everything that we went through, and it was for the family to read, for the family to hold and maybe read in the future, grandchildren, whatever. And it was my youngest daughter when electronic books came out. She had taken my manuscript, which was in a folder, and she had passed it around to some of her friends and things like that, and they all said the same thing, make it a book. And she said she wanted to do it, so I gave her a flash drive, and I gave her this. The cover of this is actually my mock-up. It was supposed to be a mock-up, and I wanted it done professionally. She took the flash drive, and I had it written by Catherine Higdon, as told to by Edwin Becker. I didn't want any part of the paranormal. But my youngest, unlike my oldest, doesn't listen to me at all. So she took the flash drive. She took the flash drive and she just published it. And I was angry, especially when I saw that they didn't even fix the cover. And but then I got a call from a friend of mine who said, "Your book is #1 in new releases." Okay. Yeah.
But now you can't be angry anymore.
But I had to take it and I had to change it into a book format. And I made some screw-ups in there. I mean, once my family read it, I mentioned that my Aunt Helen was my favorite aunt, and that kind of put off my other aunts. That was in my diary, but it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be in the book.
honesty gets you in trouble.
That's right. You got yourself in trouble. Here's a question for you, Ed, from the chat room. Do you have any continuing nightmares from this experience? This is from The Walking Dead.
None.
Good.
None.
And here's a question from Camille. Do you feel anything followed you home?
That's arguable because I'd like to say no, but I've had people in my life tell me yes, because there's some things that have happened to me that are just highly unusual.
Right.
I'd like to say no. I try not to think about it. I don't, it's much like people spend their lives, some people I know spend their lives thinking about demons and demonology and all that crap. Mm-hmm. I think about angels. Mm-hmm. So I pray to God and I think about angels. I don't want to see an apparition. I want to see an angel. And my mind is nice. Stays in a good place. It stays in a good place.
That's sense. Wonderful. Yes. Well, after all you've been through, my goodness. Now, there's just so much to this story. So many things have happened. And again, I want to urge everybody to buy your book so that they can read every detail of this story, because it is remarkable. And also to take a look at Paranormal Witness. Is called The Tenants, is the segment that they did for their show. It's an excellent portrayal of your story, Ed. It's very well done. I love Paranormal Witness. It's one of my favorite shows, and I'm glad they picked up on your story. Now, here's a question about, do you think that there's an imprint of these spirits in the actual building itself, a kind of a living imprint in the bricks and the mortar of this building?
No, I really don't believe in that or residual stuff. I think, one of the questions, we've got in this country 5,000 investigation groups. If you go to Paranormal Societies, Inc., you'll see that there's like 3,000 registered. And one of the things I wrote, William Wilkins, the president, is I said, if you could only get like 500 or so groups to participate and give them the same questionnaire, exactly the same questionnaire. So let them record what time of day, what they're doing, what the environment was, but then always ask the same questions. Because one of the things that teased me off in a bit is no one knows more about paranormal than I did 45 years ago. So, is it hot on the other side or is it cold? Is it dark or is it light? Can they communicate with each other? Do they have time? There's questions to be answered that could very well be answered, but no one's asking those questions. They're asking other kinds of questions. And I don't believe that, I'm not sure, but I think spirits are bound by something. You know, they're bound because, you know, much like that building was built in 1892, only family members lived there. Marcia and I were the first ones to walk in there. They were non-family. So, I mean, even though I never saw many of the ghosts that were there, you make an assumption that, yeah, it's probably the family and they're bound to that location. I kind of feel that that's what keeps a lot of people here, is they're attached to something that's far more important than you'd obviously think. You know, they're attached to.
Right.
I don't believe in haunted objects much because Marcia and I owned a collectible store in Clever, Missouri, and I probably handled 100,000 items, pocket watches from the 1800s and inscribed rings and things like that. And we did come across a couple items out of, you know, 100,000 maybe, but they're not. It's not common to find a haunted item. And there's no such thing as haunted dolls, demonic dolls. A demon needs a vessel. It needs a soul. If it doesn't have a soul to take, whatever the item is, it's worthless. It's worthless to that demon. So, you know, when I hear about haunted trains or haunted dolls or haunted whatever, you know, ghosts in a jar, it's like, no, it's that, to me, that's the corruption that TV and movies and media have made in a true paranormal.
Yeah. When you said a haunted item, are you talking maybe a piece of jewelry that someone may have, an item that they kept close to them that may have picked up the negativity of the individual?
Yeah, it don't have to be negative. It may be just jealousy or
okay.
You know, I bought Marcia, this is a true story, I bought Marcia the one item that, you know, out of thousands, I bought Marcia, she collected antique wedding bands. And over the years, whenever I'd run into one unusual or something nice, I'd buy it for her. So I bought her, I ran into this 18 karat gold. It happened to be her size. And it was carved all the way around. It was gorgeous. It was a rose gold. So I bought it for her and I gave it to her. And she loved it. She put it on. And the next morning she got up and she had the ring and she put it on the kitchen table. And I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "Look what it did to my finger." Well, to me, it looked like, you know, the kind of mark a non-gold item would make.
Oh, uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "That's 18 karat. I know it's 18 karat." And she said, "You know, I said, put it on your other finger, on your other hand." So she did that. Same thing. And I said, "What are you feeling?" And she said, "It burns."
Oh, my.
For heaven's sakes.
So my daughter wanted it, my oldest daughter, and I said no. And I took it to a coin dealer in Wakanda, in downtown. And he didn't deal in jewelry at all, but he did deal in what's called melt. So if you sold him something, he was going to melt it. He'd give you the melting price. I made him promise me he was going to melt that ring. And that's how we got rid of it.
Wow.
But, you know, people say, well, it's haunted and that was going to hurt you. It may just have been a jealousy. It may be that whatever was attached to it didn't want anyone else to covet that ring or to own it. Yeah. You can't ever explain it. You know, I mean, that's why it's paranormal.
Right.
If we had clear answers, we'd know the answers.
Well, here's a question for you. Again, from The Walking Dead. I'm going to go to Gorgon now. What did the neighbors think about all the commotion and the cameras around the house?
They were curious. But it's like I tell people that, you know, some people have written me nasty letters. Because when I gave it away to my real estate agent, I did tell them it was haunted, but there were no disclosures in those years. I didn't have to tell them. And if I did write haunted house on the front of it, you know, the city probably would have arrested me or given me a fine or something.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, true.
The neighbors,
towns and cities can be weird.
The neighbors saw what was going on, but I probably half of them thought it was a domestic disturbance or something. Yeah. I really don't know what they thought. Today, I do know that I've talked to two different people. One is a woman in Miami. She owned a house very similar to mine on the same block. So she wrote me to tell me about the occupation of her house. She had ghosts there.
Oh.
And you know, I came to realize, I got a letter from another person who's still my friend. We keep in touch. She lives 2 blocks over. She also has ghosts.
Oh.
But when I thought about it, it's like when you're, you know, whether you're in Brooklyn or whether you're in Baltimore or Chicago or New York, if you got buildings that are 100 years old, where they had funerals in the front from wakes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, number one, if it's 100 years old, do you think that no one ever died there? So you kind of know the deaths were there. Whether they're active or not, you know, it depends on the situation. But,
Exactly.
But, you know, it would surprise me if any of the buildings that are in that age group are not haunted in some way.
Right.
It would really surprise me.
Now, here's a question from, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
here's a question from Big Bird, and which addresses something we were talking about off the air. Do you think the Ouija board played a big part in these happenings?
Yeah, I would say it played a pretty good part in escalating the activity.
Because you said that you found an old, worn Ouija board, right?
Right.
So somebody had it in the house before you moved in, and it looked like they had been using it quite a bit, right?
Right. And at the time, it meant nothing to me. But it wasn't until after it was over and I had a good education that I realized that Ouija board was worn. I mean, it was worn out. So did they conjure something? I don't know. But it very well could be that the whole thing was a bunch of conjured spirits. And that there is
Very well be. Yes.
There is a spirit that I know exists, because I've seen it, that I don't believe is human. So it's a dark mass, and it moves very, very fast. And I've seen it twice, and I think maybe that's something that comes out of the nether worlds or wherever. You know, I don't know much about hoodoo or voodoo or anything like that, but I think there's something else besides human spirits that also walks the earth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we would agree with that.
Definitely.
And here's a question from Shandarik again. It wants to know, are we allowed to take a look inside this house? Is it open?
I never give the address out. So the history of it it's been sold many times. It's been in foreclosure twice. I had a letter today actually asking me for the address. It was from a woman in South Africa, so I'm wondering what the hell she wants the address in Chicago.
Maybe she's going to fly over.
But I told her, you know.
Oh my God.
No, I've had
That'd be a house
attorneys.
I'd stay.
I've had people come after me, and disc jockeys and attorneys, and they all want to know. And my feeling is, I hope the house is cleansed. If it is cleansed, the people deserve peace.
Right.
If it isn't cleansed, the people deserve peace. They don't need to have curiosity seekers
Right.
running in. And you know, it's one of these things that I love investigators who are human oriented. That, you know, maybe they'll diagnose a problem and then help the person get help in fixing that problem. But unfortunately, a greater percentage of investigators are thrill seekers.
Right.
And you know, like I would want to send a pack of thrill seekers to these people. I mean, I know what I would have did if I lived there and these investigators would have came to the door.
Mm-hmm.
They would have went down seven stairs very fast.
I was wondering, since you were talking about 3 different areas within a couple blocks of one another, how far back possibly something may have happened within that perimeter, possibly on the land itself prior to the building.
I've had a medium tell me that she felt strongly that it had nothing to do with the house itself.
Yeah.
That had to do with the original landowners. That sold and parsed.
Yeah, I kept picking that up as we're talking about it, when you're talking about the different areas, that it's maybe not the houses, but it's the land itself. Something transpired. Is there any way of checking historically what may have happened on that property or the properties?
I don't know, and
Yeah.
I don't want to sound curt, but I really don't care.
Right. Well, I don't, after what you've been through, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. But
You know,
Right.
people
course-
always ask me, did you get the records? Well, I don't have an interest in that, but the truth of the matter is, if I wanted to, I would have had to take time off work and go down to City Hall. I would have had to pay a fee and fill out an application. The records there were on microfilm or in files. So I would leave, okay, and maybe they'd say come back Friday, and I'd come back Friday, and then I would have got the copies and paid for them. And both times taking time off of work.
Mhm.
I wasn't going to do that.
And there's
Yeah.
a reason that we fall into some of these things. The reason was you weren't supposed to know. It wasn't. You'd already been through your portion of it. The having to go through that with somebody else isn't what you needed or wanted.
Yeah, I was never a curious person. I mean, I saw a psychologist sometime back for my coping with my arrhythmia, and she said I'm an unusual person. She said I can shut the door and not open it because She started to ask me about my childhood, which I had a very abusive childhood, violent, and I said we're not going to talk about that. That doesn't affect me. And in talking to me, she realized it really didn't affect me. Because I kind of believe that, and I hate when I meet someone who's, especially if they're 40 years old, and they say, the reason I did this is because my father did that. It's like, that's bull crap, I mean, I felt like once I was 17, 18 years old, I was my own man. And that's where the chapter started. And no, I can't blame my mother and my father for anything. So yeah, I closed the door on it, and much like I did Camel Street, I other than printing my diary, I didn't want to be in the paranormal. So, I mean, and if you talk to Mark Lewis, I went through three or four producers. I mean, I really peed them off because I was absolutely cruel and rude to them. I said, no, I'm not doing anything. But my granddaughters were all sci-fi. I don't have cable TV or dish. I don't care about any of these things. But my granddaughters do. And when they found out the program, they said, Papa, we're going to disown you if you don't do the program.
And that got your attention. Oh,
yeah,
my.
So I did Paranormal Witness, and that was the first time I ever talked publicly. And then, I'm so old school. After Paranormal Witness, people came after me and they said, will you do our radio program? Well, the only radio program I ever did was Jack Eigen with Joe DeLuise in the 70s. You had to go down to a studio and you had to sit there. Sometimes ours had an audience and you had to listen to the delay through the speakers, which was maddening. So the first person who called me after Paranormal Witness and said, do you want to be on my program? I said, no. And the second one, I said, no. And the third one, I said, no. And finally, the fourth one, she said to me, why? And I said, I don't travel. I ain't going anywhere. And I said, you're in Joplin. And she said, you don't have to travel. You do this on the phone. And I said, okay.
So that changed everything.
Yeah, if she would have told me that, I wouldn't be doing radio today because I'm the laziest author that you'll ever meet. I am. I won't do any appearances. I won't do paid appearances. No one's ever seen me. I mean, some people in paranormal run for the Paracons and they want to be there. I don't go to Paracons. I've been asked to host places where it's haunted. I won't go there. I just want to stay home and be left alone. I mean,
Totally understandable, Ed. And you are a rare bird because, quite honestly, I love your attitude. I love the way that you can say no, this isn't for me, and just go on about your business. And I think the strength of your character and your ability to put up boundaries to these things is probably what kept you sane during these experiences.
Yes.
Because let's face it, it did break your sister. And, again, you weren't the one fooling around with the Ouija board, but you were at the effect of all of these spirit encounters, and they were not, a lot of them were not pleasant, and would be quite frightening to most normal people. But, you were able to come through this and report it to us and our audience, and let everybody know this is what happened, and don't fool around with it. It's not to be messed with. And again,
sure.
great advice for everybody. And it's your strength of character that allowed this, I think, to happen this way.
Well, if anybody reads the book and you enjoy the book, you got to look up Catherine Higdon on, Kat Higdon is what she goes by, on Facebook, because the book wouldn't be out there if it wasn't for her.
Okay.
I never wanted it to exist, actually.
Oh.
I didn't
Now,
want to be in paranormal.
Well, you mentioned that you have received quite a few emails. Now, how can people reach out to you if they have questions? How can they get a hold of you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, and you can't miss me because I use the True Haunting picture as my profile picture.
Oh, great.
I've got two websites, www.edwinbecker.com and www.truehaunting.com. True Haunting is a pretty nice website. It's got reviews. It's got the story of Paranormal Witness. It's got the story of the whole place. EdwinBecker.com is got a little bit on it, but I think most popular recently are my webisodes, because I talk honestly and share my experience for what it is.
That's wonderful.
I don't think there's experts. Whenever I meet anybody who thinks they know it all, I run, because we're lacking so many answers when it comes to paranormal.
Oh, true.
And we don't know what we're dealing with. Still yet, we don't know what we're dealing with.
Well, that's a very good point. We would all like to know more, and I think, unfortunately, there's been such a stigma, which we see now starting to go away, which is nice, so that we may finally, I hope, get some of those answers, Ed. But, Ed, I want to thank you again on behalf of PK and myself for coming on the show tonight. You saved us, and you also gave us all this great information for our audience, who is definitely mesmerized by your story. So everybody, get the books: True Haunting, Book 1, True Haunting, Book 2.
Book 2.
You will not be disappointed. And next week, we're back to UFOs and aliens. We've got a great ET story for you coming in next week. Until then, we'll see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everybody.
Good
Good night.
night.